Hi all, very good morning. So welcome to JavaIntroduction Technologies. So today we'll get started with Java programming language. Okay, so as part of today's session, so we'll try to learn introduction about Java. Okay, let me just share my screen. So today we'll try to learn about introduction to Java and what are the different types of applications we'll be able to develop after learning Java. So first of all, we'll try to understand what is Java. So whenever we say Java, so just like other programming languages like C or C++, Java is also a programming language, but we call it as an object-oriented programming language. So Java is an object-oriented programming language. So whenever we say Java, so we call it as an object-oriented programming language. So we'll try to see what are the different types of applications we'll be able to develop by learning Java. So if you are learning Java, so basically we can develop 4 different types of applications. So let's see. So by learning Java, we can develop 4 different types of applications. So what are they? So first one, we call it as a standalone application. Okay, so first one we call it as a standalone application. Second one we call it as a web application. Third one we call it as an enterprise application. And the fourth one, the last one, we call it as a mobile application. So if you are going to learn the entire Java course, so these are the 4 different types of applications we'll be able to develop. So first one, we call it as a standalone application. Second one, we call it as an enterprise application. The third one, we call it, second one, we call it as a web application. Third one, we call it as an enterprise application. And the fourth one, we call it as a mobile application. I'm sorry. So we'll try to discuss slowly about each and every type of application. Okay. So first, what is mean by standalone application? So whenever we say standalone application, so standalone applications are those applications they have to be installed on each and every machine. So let me say standalone applications are those applications which needs to be installed on each and every machine. So let's take some example. Okay, so let's assume today you have purchased a new laptop or you have purchased a new desktop. So what is the first step we are going to do? So what we will try to do is like, so whenever we purchase a new laptop, whenever we will purchase any new desktop, so in order to protect your laptop or desktop from harmful viruses, so what we are going to do from internet, like from your Google or somewhere, we'll try to download the antivirus, and that antivirus we are trying to install on our machine, right? So now if you see downloading that antivirus and you are trying to install on your machine, right? So those kind of applications, we call them as standalone applications, right? Antivirus is one example. So let me say example as antivirus. Then suppose you have been keep on working for a couple of hours. Then you feel like you are a little bit tired. So you want some kind of a relaxment. Then in that scenario, what we are going to do? So I want to watch some kind of a movie or I want to watch some kind of songs. then in that scenario, we cannot watch the movie or we cannot watch the songs directly, right? So in order to watch a movie or in order to watch songs, we require certain kind of players. Like most of the time we will be using VLC media player or Windows media player, right? So again, you have to download them from the internet and you have to install them. So after installing them, then only you'll be able to use it, right? So those kind of applications, we call them as standalone applications. So standalone applications are something like where they have to be downloaded and they have to be installed on our machine. So those kind of applications, we call them as standalone applications. So another example is like media player. Then second type of application, we call it as a web application. So what is this web application? So whenever we say web application, so there will be a client and there will be a server and there will be an information exchange between a client and server. So those kind of applications, we call them as web applications. So let me say exchange of information between a client and a server is called web application. Okay, so now so we have been using multiple web applications in our daily life, right? So if you see, best example, I can say Facebook is a web application, Twitter is a web application, YouTube is a web application, Gmail is a web application. So we are using lot of web applications. So let me simply say Gmail, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Okay, Facebook, etc. So now in this scenario, who is your client and who is your server? So where is the information exchange happening? Okay, so let's just understand. So first I want to open a Facebook application or I want to open a Gmail application. So how you are going to open a Facebook application or how you are going to open a Gmail application? So in order to open any application, so first we require a browser, right? If you people remember, we'll try to open a browser and inside the browser, okay, under the address bar. So we used to have an address bar. Under the address bar, we used to enter some URL. Suppose if I want to open a Facebook application. Okay, so what we'll try to say? We'll try to enter a URL something like this, right? www.facebook.com. So www.facebook.com. Correct? Let me just decrease the size. Okay, so I'm entering in the address bar an URL something called as www.facebook.com. So this is your browser. Okay, now this browser is acting as a client. Getting my point, guys? So whenever I want to access any Facebook application, so what we are going to do? So we are going to open a browser. Okay, after opening a browser, in the browser address bar URL or in the address bar, we are trying to type a URL something called as www.facebook.com. So now this browser is acting as a client. Now, whenever we are entering this URL pattern, or whenever we are trying to enter this URL www.facebook.com, so internally what happens? So this facebook.com, it will be mapped to one particular IP address. Okay, so this facebook.com URL, it will be mapped to some IP address. For example, let us assume like, so this www.facebook.com URL, it has been mapped to an IP address, something called as 10.20.30.40. I'm just giving an example there. Okay, so this URL www.facebook.com, it has been mapped to an IP address, something called as 10.20.30.40. So whenever you enter this URL, so it internally converts to this IP address. Now, what is this IP address? Actually, this IP address is some application or some server's IP address. So whenever any system or whenever any computer, it has been connected to a network, so every computer will have an IP address. Now this IP address will be some remote locations machines address. Like for every person there will be an address. In the same fashion, for every computer whichever it is connected to a network, now that particular computer will have an IP address. Now let us assume like this is one computer which is connected to a network, and this computer's IP address is 10.20.30.40. Now whenever you are trying to say www.facebook.com, this facebook.com URL has been mapped to an IP address something called as 10.20.30.40. Now this IP address is a address of some particular computer, and inside this particular computer generally they will be hosting the Facebook application. They will be hosting the Facebook application. They will be hosting the Facebook application. So when you enter an when you enter an URL something called as www.facebook.com, it is mapped to one IP address 10.20.30.40. Okay, and this address is one particular computer's IP address. Let me just put this IP address also here. Okay, it is coming, the request is coming to this particular IP address. So client, he is sending a request. Now your client, your browser is trying to send a request to this particular computer. So from your browser, an information or a request is sent to this particular machine. Now once this machine receives this particular request, I'm sorry. Okay, once this particular computer, so inside this system we have hosted the Facebook application, so the request will be coming to this Facebook application. Once the request comes to this Facebook application, now the application takes that incoming request and process that incoming request, and as a response, and it is sending a response back to the client, and it is sending a response back to the client. When it is sending the response back to the client, as a result, on your browser we are getting the home page of your Facebook application, so where it will be asking you for entering a username and entering a password. Got it, guys? So I just opened my client. So client is nothing but my browser, and inside the browser I have on the address bar, I simply try to type enter an URL saying like www.facebook.com. So when you are entering this URL facebook.com, so this URL will be mapped, or this URL will be routed to an IP address something called as 10.20.30.40. Now this IP address is an address location of some particular computer, and inside that particular computer they have hosted the Facebook application. Now from your browser, when you are hitting this URL, it is making a request. Okay, it is making a request. The browser is making a request to this particular application. Once the application receives that particular request, now it is going to take that particular incoming request and it is processing that request, and in return it is sending the response. Now once it receives the response in the browser, as a result it is going to display the Facebook homepage, where it will ask us to enter the username and password. So now if you see, there was an information exchange between your client and server. So these kind of applications, we call them as web applications. Hope you people understood, guys. Okay, so these kind of applications, we call them as web applications. So third one, we call it as an enterprise application. So whenever we say enterprise application, so enterprise applications, they are also similar to your web application, but here they require some kind of additional features. So let me say enterprise applications are those, or otherwise I'll simply say enterprise applications are similar to your web applications, but they require extra features. So what kind of extra features they require? So it requires like high security features. Let me simply say high security features. Then let me say load balancing. Okay, load balancing. So we'll try to talk about what is this load balancing, other stuff on later videos. Okay, load balancing, clustering, etc. So whenever we say enterprise applications, so they are similar to your web applications, but it requires some kind of extra features. So for best example, I'm trying to say high security, load balancer, clustering. So let's understand why it requires high security. For example, let us take example. I'll try to take it as any internet banking application. Okay, I'm trying to take the example as internet banking application. So nowadays everyone uses banking, right? Every person is having their own personal account, and every bank, I mean like every account, they have their own internet banking application, like whether they want to transfer funds, whether they want to receive funds. Okay, so nowadays no one are going to go for banks and doing all the transactions. So everything we are trying to do through online, right? So best example I am trying to say internet banking applications. So in case of internet banking applications, why do we require heavy security, or why we require high security? Suppose if you don't have a good security mechanism, or if you don't have a high security mechanism, so attackers can easily hack your account and they can transfer your money, correct? So that is the reason. So here you require high security standards. For example, like whenever you want to make a transaction, okay, so whenever you want to make send funds to your friend, so it says I'll be sending you some kind of OTP to your registered mobile. So until and unless you don't enter that OTP, it will not allow you to transfer funds. Or sometimes if you want to add any payee to your internet banking application, so it asks different types of security questions, like what is your mother's maiden name, or what is your mother's date of birth, something like that. So until and unless you don't answer those security questions, it will not allow you to add a payee, or it will not allow you to transfer funds, something like that. So those kind of applications, we call them as enterprise applications. Okay, so last one, we call it as a mobile application. So whenever we say mobile applications, so mobile applications are those applications which needs to be installed on mobile. So I can simply put a definition: applications that needs to be installed on mobiles is called mobile application. Okay, so we have a lot of examples, right? Like if you see phone pay, Google Pay, right? Paytm. So we have different types of applications. Okay, Instagram, okay, Instagram, WhatsApp, all these are called as mobile applications. Okay, so whenever we say mobile applications that needs to be installed on mobiles is called as a mobile application, or which are the applications that you will be able to use inside your mobile are called as mobile applications. So examples I have given it as phone pay, Google Pay, Paytm, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc. Okay, so if you are learning Java, if you are learning complete Java, so these are the 4 different types of applications we'll be able to develop. So first one, we call it as a standalone application. Second one, we call it as a web application. Third one, we call it as an enterprise application. And the fourth one, we call it as a mobile application. Okay, fine. So, sorry. So in order to develop a standalone application, so we are going to use a tech stack. Okay, let me simply say tech stack or a technology stack. So we are going to make use of AWT. So AWT, it stands for Abstract Window Toolkit. Okay, so we are going to make use of Abstract AWT and Swings. So in Java, we have a concept something called as a AWT and Swings. So by using this AWT and Swings, we'll be able to develop standalone applications. Then second one, in order to develop web applications, so we are going to make use of a tech stack something like this. we are going to make use of a tech stack. Like in olden days, people were using something like servlets and JSPs, but as the trend has been changed nowadays, people are using like Spring Boot, microservices, etc. So we have many front-end technologies also, like AngularJS or React.js. So by using them, they will be able to, so they will use a combination like AngularJS with Spring Boot or React.js with Spring Boot, and they can make use of microservices, something like that. So by using this tech stack, we'll be able to develop web applications. So in case of your enterprise applications also, it is similar, like we are going to make use of same tech stack. And here extra we can have something like EJB. We have something called as a EJB. Let me simply say, instead of this, I can simply specify EJB. So EJB, it stands for Enterprise Java Bean. So we are going to make use of EJB. So EJB, it stands for Enterprise Java Bean. And then the fourth one, we call it as a mobile application. So in order to develop mobile applications, so we are going to make use of J2ME. So it stands for, so let me say, Java 2 Mobile Edition. So we are going to make use of Java 2 Mobile Edition. So, so these are the technology stack what we are going to use in order to develop this kind of applications. Hope you like this video. So I'll be sharing this all information. Like if you people want to make a note of this entire piece of code, or if you want to make a note of this entire definitions, I'll be keep on posting it inside my GitHub account. So my GitHub account, it is something like bggiridhar163. Under that, I try to create a repository with name something called as a Core Java tutorial. So under this Core Java tutorial, I'll be keeping this entire piece of code. And then if you want to know more about our upcoming new batches, you can visit our website joctopus.co.in. So we are from Joctopus Technologies. You can just go to our website joctopus.co.in, or suppose if you want to follow us on Facebook, you can follow us on Facebook on Java Online Training. So for upcoming latest batches, you can visit our Facebook page Java Online Training. For upcoming jobs, for new batches and everything, you can reach out to us. Thank you guys. Bye bye.